Welcome to the Black Gems Dive In podcast, the podcast where we dive deep into conversations about inclusive cultures and everything DEI. Your co-hosts are Akua and Kendra, and we're thrilled to be your hosts as we explore the crucial topics shaping our workplaces and communities today. In each episode, we'll unpack insights, share stories, and engage with experts to foster a deeper understanding of how we can create more inclusive environments where everyone feels valued and empowered.
Hey, Kua.
Hey, Kendra.
We're back for another episode.
Another episode of the Black Gems Dive In podcast.
Yeah, I keep saying it, but we've been consistent.
We have.
It's a little difficult some weeks, but at least we're getting the content out, and we appreciate the feedback because so many people have stopped us at the coffee shops or grocery stores or whatever to say, I listened to your podcast.
Yeah.
We've been getting some engagement on social media, some increased subscribers on YouTube, so it's just been really great to put out the content and then also to have you guys engage with us.
Yeah, so if you aren't following us already, right?
Yes.
Please subscribe, follow us on all of the socials, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Yes.
But yeah, we're excited. Folks have been commenting on posts as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we've gotten some engagement on that side, and folks who are disagreeing with some of the content that we're putting out and also agreeing. But I think the disagreeing piece has been interesting because we've been like, okay, so what do we need to kind of dive into a little bit more, maybe to get a better understanding of what we're talking about?
And I wouldn't necessarily say disagree. It's like we're saying the same thing. We're just not speaking the same language.
Well, that one did disagree. I ain't gonna hold you out. The one disagreed. So we're gonna see. And that was really about microaggressions, right? And we're still having this conversation. And is it important to have that conversation?
Exactly.
And so, do you think it's important?
Yes, it is important, especially now as I come through with my braids and everything else. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I mean, even more so than just the appearance side of this, right? There's things that are still happening within organizations, and that's what we were talking about. So check out the episodes. I know a lot of folks will listen to maybe a clip that's put out there without fully diving into our information that we're putting out there. So read the whole thing, y'all.
Yes, listen to us.
Read it, listen to it, all those things.
Yeah.
All right. So
before we start with all of our segments, we have a guest today, which we haven't had a guest in a very long time.
Exactly.
So we have my friend, my brother, Babatunde Cole.
Hello.
Hey.
Thank you for having me. Consistency is key, so I want to say shout out to both of y'all. All right, and haters are gonna hate.
Yeah.
So
very true.
You don't let them do that.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? That means you're doing something right. So
there you go.
Keep up the great work.
There you go.
Definitely happy to be here. Excited to be in the hot seat.
Yes.
I'm ready to go.
All right. Yeah. Well, can you introduce yourself to the people?
Absolutely. So I'm Babatunde Cole. I am a financial advisor. I'm all about the community, giving back, and pushing the agenda forward, however that might look.
Yes.
All right.
I like
and honestly, last episode you did a little shout out.
I did give Baba a shout out. Did you listen, Baba?
Oh, see, listen. See, my check is with my savings. Take 3 business days, so it's on my list though. It's in my queue. It's in my queue.
Okay, all right. Give you a shout out with my quote, my gem of the day.
Yes,
which we'll ask you what your gem of the day is as well.
Ooh, okay.
So think about that as we start.
Already got one.
We start talking.
Okay.
Yes,
Look, he got the quotes. He's ready. He's ready.
Yeah.
So we'll start with our diversity dispatch, right? And this is where we're just watching things that are happening around us, in society. Things like, the affirmative action cases. We talked about the Fearless Fund the last time as well. But today we're actually going to discuss Meta, right? And so it came from POC in Tech. So People of Color in Tech Instagram page where it said, Meta's AI Advisory Council has no women, no people of color, or ethicists. And so it says that Meta recently announced the formation of an AI Advisory Council made up entirely of white men. This AI Advisory Council is distinct from Meta's board of directors and its oversight board, which have more diverse gender and racial representation. Unlike these bodies, the AI Council was not elected by shareholders and held no fiduciary duties. Meta told Bloomberg that the council would provide insights and recommendations on technological advancements, innovation, and strategic growth opportunities. The council comprises Stripe, Shopify, and Microsoft business executives, but seemingly no ethicists nor researchers with relevant expertise. And so this is something that's coming out, right? AI is booming right now, right? Like, I know we talk about different things in business and how we've been utilizing AI supports in business, but as things go, we know that there could be things that come up that people aren't even thinking about, biases that they're not thinking about either. So
yeah, there's a lot of biases when it comes to AI, and we talked about this on our previous podcast about a year ago when all these developments were coming up, and we were even talking about facial recognition, right? How there were some issues with facial recognition just because of the way it was developed,
right?
Even when it comes to voice recognition, there's also some flaws as well, and so we know that AI is only as good as who builds it.
Exactly.
And it has to continue to diversify when it comes to many of these marginalized communities. Right.
I mean, we have to look at the population as a whole. So when we're not including, what is it, maybe 70% of the population at this point?
Right.
I mean, I forget the exact number, but at some point, we going to be the majority.
Right.
So therefore, if you're looking at from an effective standpoint, having a diverse board is going to essentially improve your results, your revenue. There are 1,000 financial models that show diversity increases productivity.
Exactly.
And I mean, if we look at the news and look at the trends, Meta hasn't been doing that great.
Right.
So therefore, maybe you should look at your practices and kind of look at, who is or is not in the room. And then let's have a conversation.
And we've talked about even their DEI staffing, right? And how that's been reduced over the years since George Floyd and people making those commitments as well. So I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot when you think about AI as a whole, and even think about, some of these companies like Meta may be setting themselves up for discrimination cases. I think about even years ago, and I brought this up in the previous podcast, where Amazon was sued because they had a bias in their AI system when it came to women, when they were hiring women.
Right.
And so there could be some issues coming up there. And so these companies have to continue to diversify, because we know that it's going to cost them a lot of money in the end game. Yeah. So we'll continue to watch this, but people are also calling out these companies as well, right? As they should, right? Yeah, they're seeing this, calling it out. I didn't know this, and because they're not, on the board, and they don't hold any fiduciary responsibility, potentially they could be like, oh, we're going to hide them underneath so people don't really see them. But no, stuff like this is being exposed.
It is.
And it should be.
And it should be, right? And I think we actually had a discussion yesterday, a Juneteenth event that happened, and one of the founders of color, Black founder, talked about what was happening in Silicon Valley.
Yes.
And talked about how, diversity was all the rage before, and we've said this, right? Diversity was all the rage. Everybody was saying we need to diversify boards and really make this a thing. And now he mentioned it's the reverse happening. Now it's cool to hate on diversity and say, oh, we don't need this anymore. And so I think on that standpoint, we need to do a little bit more research and kind of see what's happening in that space, because now we're kind of going backwards.
Because people aren't holding folks accountable.
Right.
Consistency.
Right.
Sounds like the word of the day over here.
It is the word of the day. Y'all got to show the people how to be consistent, because clearly they're struggling.
Yeah, but there's some dollars and cents attached to it as well. So, that was our diversity dispatch for our segment. And moving into our hot topic for the week. Yeah. Right? And so our hot topic is something that, again, that everyone should just be aware of what's going on. And it seems like, again, every day there is something new that's popping up, especially now because the presidential election is happening. There's just so much that's going on in the courts, so much that's going on in the media when it comes to some of these politicians. But there was an article, NBC News, and even outside this article, we knew what happened, y'all. Yeah. But it says Trump surrogate Byron Donalds harkens back to Jim Crow era when the Black family was together. So the Florida Republican made his remarks during a Trump campaign event in Philadelphia aimed at winning over Black voters who traditionally have sided with Democrats. And it says Byron Donalds, speaking Tuesday at a Black voter outreach event for former President Donald Trump, suggested that Black families were more unified and better off during the Jim Crow era, sparking immediate backlash from top Black Democratic officials. At the Philadelphia campaign event, Donalds, a Florida Republican like Trump, suggested that things have gotten worse for Black people after they embraced Democrats following President Lyndon Johnson's enactment of Great Society programs in the 1960s, including an expansion of federal food stamps, housing, welfare, and Medicaid for low-income families. And he said, you see, during Jim Crow, the Black family was together. During Jim Crow, more Black people were not just conservative. Black people have always been conservative-minded, but more Black people voted conservatively, Donalds, one of Trump's top allies in Congress and campaign surrogate, said in his remarks.
During Jim Crow, the black family was together.
That's right.
During Jim Crow, more black people were not just conservative, because black people always have been conservative-minded, but more black people voted conservatively. And then HEW, Lyndon Johnson, and then you go down that road, and now we are where we are.
Yeah. It's like there's so much in this article.
There's a lot.
There's a lot to really dive into and really to pick apart. But some of the backlash that was received was talking about, and just to summarize, is that, okay, you're talking about going back to Jim Crow and the black families was together, but was black families better when Emmett Till was killed?
Yeah.
Right? Was black families better when they were lynched?
Yeah.
All these different things. And so I feel like it was a very ignorant comment to make.
Yeah.
Extremely.
And even if he felt like he was just brushing over it, it had a lasting impact.
A lasting impact, to say the least.
Yeah.
It said that Representative Hakeem Jeffries, and he's the House minority leader right now, gave a blistering speech around that, right?
Yes.
And so he mentioned exactly what you said. He said that it came to his attention that the so-called leader made the factually inaccurate statement that black folks were better off during Jim Crow, and he said that was outlandish, outrageous, and out of pocket. He talked about Emmett Till specifically, and he said we were not better off when black women could be sexually assaulted without consequence because of Jim Crow, when Emmett Till could be brutally murdered without consequence because of Jim Crow. And I mean, we could go on and on and on about different examples here, but I also saw a comment afterwards talking about his family unit and what that looked like, and how he is in an interracial marriage, and would he even be able to be in that interracial marriage in that time frame?
We know Virginia versus Loving.
And that would be no.
Right, Virginia versus Loving. That was what the interracial marriage was about, right? And so again, right, it's very, like you said, it's ignorant comments, but it's also very harmful and damaging, and we have to pay attention no matter what. Like, we're not diving into politics here, but no matter what, you have to pay attention to what's happening, right? And some of the divisiveness that it's creating. Yeah,
and I mean, it's divisiveness, and it's this notion of trying to win the black vote, and this is the conversation that
it's a popularity contest.
Exactly.
And anybody that comes out with a hot take, or says something controversial, that's what's going to get the people talking.
Right.
And unfortunately, we live in this society of social media and popularity, so it's just like, okay, who's the most controversial person? I mean, let's be honest. How did Trump get into office?
Right.
All right. He went through a typically unconventional route when you look at politics. But if you look at the state of the country in 2020 up to 2024 now, it's about how much attention can I get? How much can I ruffle feathers? And people like that. People like controversy. And that, unfortunately, gets people to be supported even when they have no values that they're truly actually standing on.
Exactly.
So we have to be cognizant of, are they saying things that are going to help any agenda, or are they just saying things to get attention?
This is true.
And that's the reality too, right? Like, everyone wants to put things out there to gain attention, but are we really following the policies that people are trying to push, right? And so we've had conversations around judges being appointed and how local politics really matter the most, because at the end of the day, if we're not paying attention to what's happening around us, you have things like Fearless Fund, who is getting stripped back, who give grants to black women businesses. You have conservative judges who are in here who are talking about access to abortion and contraception and all these different things that are really in the limelight right now, right? Like, there's so many different pushes, and that's probably another thing that we need to talk about.
Just rolling back some of these initiatives, I know, and we'll probably talk about this in a future podcast, but we keep talking about Project 2025 and how harmful that is, and how they're looking to roll back some Civil Rights Act petition, or things that were in the Civil Rights Act. And there's just so much in there, and so we have to dive into it. But to your point about voting and making sure we're paying attention to what's happening in these local levels, and prior to this pod, we were talking about how people listen to sound bites, right?
Exactly.
Right, how people sound bites,
they don't do the research.
To dive deep. You have to dive deep. You have to do the research. We know how social media is set up. Everything is 30 seconds, but you got to dive deep into it, and also have your own opinion about things. It's so easy to hop on the bandwagon. It's so easy.
It makes me think about, I forgot what founder this was, but he talked about access to social media and young people, and how he wouldn't allow his kids under 13 to be on social media because of the harmful effects that it can have. And I think the other part of that is just our attention span.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we need these 30 to 45 second clips because no one wants to do the research and read deeper and dive deeper. It's like, I'm just going to listen to this 10 seconds for my opinion and keep it moving. But that's harmful because
It's so dangerous.
It's dangerous,
It's so dangerous.
right?
And
We're
then your
missing
algorithms are foreign based off of what you're watching.
Exactly.
We can go into a whole nother pod about algorithms and all those different things.
Exactly.
AI, right? How AI is created and things like that. But
to your point, what really is dangerous is you can take 10 seconds of a clip and you're posting on social media and it's like, how many times do we see things are being taken out of context?
Exactly.
Or they're chopping it up, but like a full speech of what somebody said.
Right.
So it's like, again, I've seen so many times where they'll show a quick second of how somebody's being offensive, but then you read the article and they're actually giving somebody a compliment.
Exactly.
And it's like, you're completely twisting the message. So it's like, it's very important and we have to be mindful to do our due diligence, as you both said, because it's just like, look, you're at the mercy of the algorithm, and that's a scary place to be.
That's very scary when you think about it.
Yes.
It is very scary, you know?
Yeah. So we'll continue to follow this because I will always say this presidential election, I don't know if I'm ready for it, but it's here.
It's here,
It's here. It came quick.
Oof.
It came quick, so it's here again, and we have to keep following what these politicians are saying. So...
All right, so we're going to dive into our next hot topic and conversation today. And the reason we invited Baba to come on to the podcast, right? And there's a lot of conversations that are happening around generational wealth. We just, this week, it was a event that was hosted by myself, M&T, BNMC, That Brown Bag, MMB as well. And so we're talking about generational wealth and just having those conversations because we often meet up. We start to have conversations around, like, you know, maybe what you're doing career-wise, but our friend group is starting to dive a little bit deeper, right? And so we're saying, all right, we might have got a little money over here. We want to invest it. We want to do something that then gives us a larger return on our investments. And so how do we collectively have these conversations and start to change the dynamic that's happening within our families? Right. You know, because, I don't know, we even had that conversation where some folks are a little bit timid to have conversations around money, right?
A little.
And
You're being so modest.
I am being modest. You know what I mean? So people are afraid to have a conversation. They're afraid of what they can do with their money. Right. Or maybe you don't have it and you want to start to kind of accumulate that and think about a retirement plan and what comes next. And so, Baba, we inviting you to talk to the people, right? This is your space.
So I will say one thing that you just brought up that's really important is to have the conversation. That's the first step, right? And unfortunately, Black and brown people, we don't. That's just the thing. There's so much distrust. And it's like, you're at the mercy of, you know, grandma talking about, oh, I got my money stuffed under the mattress.
We literally talked about this today.
But it's like, it's unfortunately been, you know, embedded into our communities. And so it's like we have to rip off that Band-Aid and start by having the conversation. You know what I mean? And because once we do that, because there are a lot of other demographics that do it. And there are a lot of other demographics that have a lot of businesses that are booming from working together as a collective. And why is that? Because they have that communication. Right. And so I think that is the first and foremost is taking that step, right? And I think also, this might be getting a little into it, right? But we have to, in a way, stop playing the victim. And when I say that, I mean, it's 2024. We have access to all the information in the world, right? So there's no excuse for us not to be able to educate ourselves. Now, obviously, the internet, you know, as we just talked about, you have to be mindful and you have to make sure that you're looking at credible sources, but it's about us taking that responsibility and saying, you know what, I don't know what I don't know, so let me find some professionals that are licensed, right? Okay? That are licensed, I'm gonna say that one more time, and start putting a plan together. I don't want to. Can I start with my quote? Because this is the.
You got a quote. Listen,
go ahead,
he
Bobby,
ready. He got the whole quote. He ready.
If you aim at nothing, you are going to hit it with 100% accuracy every time.
Okay,
right.
I like that.
And so we have to set goals for ourselves, financial goals, not only as individuals but as a community. And then after that, we're going to achieve it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like once you create a plan, we might have to make a couple audibles, make a couple of adjustments, but having that target is ultimately going to push the agenda forward.
Man, Baba, you just said a lot.
I'm sorry.
No. And I love it. That's why we invited you on.
Right.
And we just had a conversation yesterday because Baba was getting my life together. You know, we were having a little one-on-one. And something we had talked about in this article that I shared with you, Kua, as well, was about wills, right? And then this is what kind of sparked the conversation and how traditionally, and I have some numbers here too, but traditionally and historically, Black and brown people did not have wills because they did not necessarily have access to legal services back in the day.
Sure.
Right? However, to your point, it is not an excuse. It is 2024 and we have to get our stuff together. But according to an article back in, actually it was 2022, it says why people of color are less likely to have a will, and it was by Consumer Reports. But one of the statistics that they said is that, you know, if you have not created a will, obviously, you know, start thinking about one, start putting one together. But some of the stats were, while 61% of whites and 67% of English-speaking Asians don't have a will, a larger percentage of Black people, 77%, and Hispanic people, 82%, don't have a will. Those without a will cited several reasons, including the assumption that they don't have enough assets. So I would love to dive into that because we talked about that yesterday, Baba. 25% overall. They're not sure how to create one, 20%, and they want their next to kin. They want their next to kin to automatically receive everything, 9%, and they think they're too young, 23%, or they just don't know, or they just don't want to think about death, which is 12%.
Okay.
Right. So there's a lot of different reasons, but I would say the highest reason is because they feel as if they don't have enough assets.
Okay. Well, if you have a bank account, you have an asset. If you have a checking account, that is an asset. So I think sometimes people think that assets are only if you just have property or if you've got like 7 cars, which are liabilities, but I'm not going to go into that. But ownership, whatever you own is an asset. And let's be honest, your biggest asset is you. You are your biggest asset. So therefore, you need to make sure that is covered. Right? And so we all have human capital just by breathing and being members of society. So that is, I've heard that often, and that is the furthest thing from the truth. If you get up and you go to work every day, you're an asset. End of story.
Right.
I do. Okay, so this is me playing a little devil's advocate because, and you know, somebody that truly believes in this. I'm actually having a lot of conversations right now with my parents. We're going through the process of building a family trust and, you know, having those conversations. So just putting that there. But on the opposite end of that, I do want to just put an asterisk next to some of the historical context of the dynamics, right? Like when you think about the demographics, you think about the data, when you think about generational wealth, we often are starting a lot further behind than any of those demographics that you mentioned, right? When the conversation around generational wealth is happening, they're talking about another 250 years before we reach ground zero. You know, breaking that ground zero to say now we can start to accumulate that wealth because oftentimes in our families, you know, it's not passed down. It's not a conversation that's happening where we have things that we can keep moving. When you think about real estate and you think about redlining and you think about all these things that have happened on that end, even home ownership is something that we're still aspiring to do in a lot of the conversations. So I just want to put that there and paint the narrative that yes, agreed, all these things need to happen, but we are starting so much further behind that we need to account for that.
I agree and disagree all the time.
I love that. I see. So we've talked about having someone come on the pod that agrees and disagrees with this because I love this.
So, you know, kind of what we were just talking about a little bit earlier, are we at a disadvantage? Absolutely. However, it's 2024 and we have access to a lot more resources than that we choose to look for. And so when you're talking about generational wealth, there are things that we can do today without being a multimillionaire, without having all of these like $500,000 in the bank to help push the agenda forward, help push our family forward. For example, how many Black and brown people think life insurance is a scam? Let's talk about that.
Very true.
Let's talk about that, right? You can get a term policy for less than a Henny bottle. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Right?
I'm just
put it in. And for those who don't know, a Henny bottle is Hennessy cognac.
Oh, okay.
He said Henny. Look,
Hennessy cognac.
Because I gotta talk to the people that know who I'm talking to a certain specific person or people, if you will, right? But this is again having the responsibility to educate yourself about the things that are out there because it's like I get it. right?
Yeah.
We are at a disadvantage, but it's 2024 and we don't always have to be.
Agreed.
And it's all about taking the initiative to put ourselves in a better position and having the conversation. I don't know what percentage you just brought up on that article, but it was, again, I don't want to talk about it. Look, after the first slap and cry, we all start to die, okay? So we have to have those conversations. Yes, it's going to be uncomfortable, but let me tell you something. What's more uncomfortable is them GoFundMe pages. That's what's uncomfortable.
That's true.
Okay?
That's very true.
Like, listen, I have plenty of personal stories where I'm like, why we got to, why?
Very true.
Why? And it's not that we don't love our families. It's that a lot of us just don't know.
That literacy is important.
The literacy, the literacy is really important. And I know even when you're talking about having those conversations, specifically in the Black and brown household, I know there's a lot of conversations with I'm going to speak from a personal perspective. My parents and my grandparents, it's none of your business, right? Breaking that down, it's none of your business. What, you trying to kill me quicker? You know, when I ask, I'm just saying, those are the conversations. That's why I laugh. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, no, I need to know what you have so I know that how to prepare for myself, right?
Yes.
But those are like the top two. And then the other one is, I got monies around the house, you know, laying around here. But it's like, how do you continue? And we talked about this on Monday at M&T Bank, but how do we continue to have those uncomfortable conversations? And it may need to be in non-traditional forums, right? It's not, let's sit down at a dinner table and talk about it, right? But it's how do we have those conversations? But I think more importantly is how do you build trust, even within your own family, right?
That's deep right there.
How do you build trust? And that is the conversation that at least I'm having, right, in many ways. So
I think it's trust is a time thing, and it's going to happen over time, but numbers don't lie. And so I think where you start is with that education, be like, look, these are numbers that I have pulled. These are statistics. I don't care how you feel.
Right.
This is, so you have to have that information of, look, this is what it is. I don't really care how you feel. I love you, but I don't care.
Right.
Because this is what it is. And I think that's going to have to be the first step. It's going to be a little uncomfortable. And you might get into a little bit of an argument because we don't always like to be talked to with the hard truth all the time. But it's like, oh, well, I'd rather you be mad at me now than in 20 years.
Very true.
You know, and it's like we have to, I mean, trust me, I do it every day. I have these conversations. It's like, look, I love you, but I'm going to tell you what it is. Right. Numbers don't lie. Right. And so it's about having the education readily available. And it's like you can take a horse to water, can't make him drink. But just make sure you show them the pond.
And I think you had mentioned something earlier about like what we can do, right? So no matter what, and every family is different. Every family has different dynamics. You know, some are more dysfunctional than others, and some, you know, you can have some of these conversations. Some you probably can't. But to your point, you talked about the ownership being around what can you do, and how can you start to, you know, change that tide within your families. But it also makes me think about some of my friends who, you know, some of my college friends. They talked about how they were the resource for their family. You know, in a lot of different cases, you know, they were the ones that were providing when something happened with mom's mortgage or this or that. They were the ones that were kind of that safety net. And so to your point, we have to start to change those conversations and start to think about a long-term sustainable plan. But it often makes me think about the collective conversations that need to happen as well. So we're friends. We got access to funds. It might be a building down the street that we can pool our money together and do something. And I think that's the other part of the conversation that is not happening. There's new Americans that are moving into the city of Buffalo. You see a lot of people have different sentiments around that. They're pooling their money. They're buying things. They're saying, hey, you know what? We're going to buy this business and we're going to hire our folks so that they get job training. They have, you know, experience and background. And these are folks who are newer to the country. Right? And so I think even from that standpoint, there's a lot of things that we need to have conversations around in our community to say, how do we collectively come together?
And we can do it, right? You know, Rashida Dow from M&T Bank, she had said something on Monday where she's like, listen, if I don't have it, right? If I don't have, whether it's the knowledge or whatever the case may be, then I'm going to rely on somebody who does. And that's how we collectively come together, right? So it's not necessarily always money, assets. Your knowledge is key as well. I know back in the day when Baba and I were in the trenches.
I was just about to bring that up. Talk about it.
We were in the trenches for Buffalo Urban League Young Professional. So I was the
yes,
president at the time, and Baba held me down as a VP.
Did what I could.
No, you held me down. You held me down mentally and everything else. But we had something which still goes on, which is called, why am I drawing a
Black
blank?
Restaurant Week?
No. Oh, we could talk about that too.
Okay. Bounce back.
National Day of Empowerment. Thank
Okay.
you. We had National Day of Empowerment, and we had this initiative where we talked about how do we collectively come together, almost like by the block, right?
Yes.
But in all of that, I realized that we could talk about by the block, but we had to kind of strip down some of those things and say, what do we personally need to do in order to buy the block? But now here we are in 2024. To your point, right? And we're seeing all these things rolling back. We're seeing funding rolling back from the government. We're seeing all these different things being rolled back, and support are being taken away. How do we collectively almost sustain our own communities?
Yeah.
Right? We have to kind of look at that. So we're sitting here on Jefferson and Utica, and we have a library, we have a grocery store, there's a bookstore, there's a cleaner, there's BIPOC incubator, so many different things. And this is a great way, and I know there's so many initiatives investing in here, but this is a way of kind of buying back the block, right? And we have to continue to think about that because it's like we have to collectively do it.
Hard truth.
Yes.
A lot of us have to check our ego.
And this is where I was about to go with this, right? And so I think this is the conversation that we need to have on an internal standpoint because
absolutely.
the governance model, the structure of how we do this, everybody wants to be Don Dada. Everybody wants to be number one stunner in the conversation. But the reality is when you're doing this collectively, you do have to strip down that ego and come with a sense of humility to say, I got this piece, you got this piece. Maybe your piece is bigger than everybody else's, but that means that you get a certain percentage. And how is this going to look? But the reality is, are we ready? Are we ready? I think we have to be. Or you just say, look, you might miss this train this time around. Come back around the next time. We'll come back and get you because that's really what halts us from having progress and moving forward.
I mean, it's ego, and I see even when we were in the trenches, trying to work with other nonprofits and collaborations. I ain't gonna say no names, no organizations, but we got it bad where we want to work in silos. And it's like, hold on, we have the same mission.
Exactly.
Why are you like why do you want to fight me on this? We can bind forces and have the same event together and have a larger outreach, a larger impact. Oh, but no, I'm gonna do mine on the Tuesday, so you're gonna do yours on the Tuesday. Two different locations, two different places. Come on, like what?
And that's real.
What are we trying to do? Are we trying to push the agenda forward, or are we just trying to make a name for ourselves? And oh, hey, look at me, I'm doing this great thing. You know what's important. And it's like we got to be real with ourselves. Like, all right, are you who you say you are? Or are you just putting up a front so you can get your name on the front page, or on a flyer, Eventbrite, whatever it is.
My logo is not big enough. Your logo is bigger than mine.
Put mine first. Yours second. You know what I mean?
But that's so trivial.
We're having those conversations, right? So that means we know enough people that can continue to have this conversation, and we just have to tag up with folks who are ready, right? And like I said, come back for the other folks after we done got started.
Sometimes you got to show them. You got to show them.
Exactly.
I agree. I agree with that.
So what are you leaving with the people, right? Like, so you're a financial advisor. If there are any steps, say you don't have a lot of this stuff situated and set up, what should they do first, second, third?
I mean, first things first is have a plan. And when I say that, and to have a plan, you have to start with a goal. Right? So you have to have that conversation with yourself. Like, well, what am I trying to accomplish? Do I want a certain amount of savings? All right, well, what is that number? All right, and then how do I do that? You create a budget. It's baby steps, right? And I think that one thing I've noticed in this field is, when we talk about financial literacy, like that's the phrase or title that's always thrown around, and it seems like so grandiose, but it's not. It's really simple. Financial literacy starts with creating a budget for yourself. Tracking your expenses, how much you bringing in, how much you spending, right? I can't tell you how many people I had to do that, and I don't got to say nothing. I just sit back and they be like, what?
Right.
Yo, why did I spend that every? I don't know. You
Bobby,
tell me.
You gonna get my life in check. I already know that.
Listen. But again, it's having baby steps. Don't think, and it's about making it manageable, and don't think that you have to have it all figured out on day one. It's about just starting very small, very minute. Maybe it's just, all right, I want to have a goal of saving $5 a week. that's a great start. You know what I mean? You got to start where you got to be real with yourself. Check your ego.
Yeah.
Right. You know what? Check your ego.
Okay. Number one.
Be okay with asking for help. That's where I would recommend people start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right.
I love it. So we always end with a gem of the day. So as we talked about, we're not going to have you go first because unless you want to go first.
Let him go first.
Can you think about it?
I got
he
another one.
got it.
The first one was, if you aim at nothing, you're going to hit it with 100% accuracy. But as we've had this conversation, and I think a lot of people have heard this, if you want to go quick, go alone. If you want to go far, you go together.
Yep. That fits in the segment.
It does.
Yeah.
I felt it in my spirit.
Well, also too, as we're going along with the African proverbs here,
please.
My gem is just, it's Juneteenth. I just get really excited, right? I just get really excited about Juneteenth. And I think because I've always celebrated Juneteenth in my family, right? And we've always known when Juneteenth, we knew what it was growing up. And the fact that it's being celebrated, it's being recognized for this amount of time in the past couple of years is really exciting. Juneteenth weekend, the parade is coming up in Buffalo.
It is.
And my gem is just come outside. I say go outside, but go outside, go with the people. But also too, if you have not, connected with somebody new in the community, especially within Juneteenth, like it's a great opportunity to connect with so many organizations, so many different people, eat great food, like just do something new.
Yeah.
And I know I say I'll be the auntie in the parade and just sitting back and waving at people. But but this year I'm really going to make it my priority to connect with few people and people haven't connected with in a long time.
Okay.
But Juneteenth I get excited.
I love that.
So
You got to get out there and get your shea butter, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. That's what I can't wait.
My turmeric, all of it.
All of the things.
So that's my gem. Just
Shea butter,
celebrate
cocoa
Juneteenth.
butter. So I'm just gonna do my gem of the day, since y'all want to do African proverbs and Juneteenth and that spirit,
today.
right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Sankofa, right?
Yes.
And so I'm Ghanaian. That's where my dad is from. But in order to move forward, you got to look at the past, right? And so look at the past, see where we've been, take that into account.
Yeah.
But then you got to move forward. And so even thinking about the conversation today, think about the past and how we got to this point. But to your point, let's start to create a better future for us,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that's what I'm going to leave for the people.
Yes.
But subscribe,
All of it.
all those things.
Where can the people find you?
Instagram, Baba_Cole. LinkedIn is Babatunde Cole. I think that's it.
You can't find him in Buffalo, y'all, because he be all over the place.
I'm
by Coastal.
here, I'm there. I'm everywhere. I'm
by
for the
Coastal.
people, so I got to go where the people at.
There you
know
go.
what I mean?
There you go.
I'm spreading knowledge, spreading the wealth of knowledge. That's my goal.
We're
my
just happy that
passion.
you back home for a little bit.
Well, thank you, ladies, for having me. This was really
thanks for
fun.
coming on.
I gotta show love to the people that are making a difference.
There you go.
Thank you, Baba.
Right?
Of course.
All right. Well, this is another episode.
Yes.
We'll see y'all next time.
Bye.
Peace.